When you're connected to your why, right, it's so much bigger than closing the deal. It's like you are altering somebody's life, right? And that what drives you to show up and to continue to expand that service, that more and more people could have this different quality of life, different quality of experience.
Welcome to the Inflow podcast. I am your host, Michelle Bosch. I see a gaping hole across society that focuses on the outer work and forgets about the inner work, when what we really need is to bridge the gap between prosperity and spirituality to live a life in flow, with inflows of light, inflows of cash, inflows of creativity, inflows of grace in our lives. Each week, join me for powerful messages and interviews that will leave you inspired and ready to step into flow in your higher work. So now, let's go. Welcome to the Inflow podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Bosch, and I am so excited. I cannot contain my excitement today. I have an amazing guest with me. Her name is Katerina Satori, and I'll do a brief intro about her. But just know that I've been following this amazing leader for a little bit over 10 months, I believe, in and out. And I am obsessed with her, her wisdom. She is also obsessed with wisdom, with courage, with sovereignty. And so Katerina is an internationally acclaimed spiritual teacher. She's a business and thought leader and entrepreneur. She dedicates her life, to service, to serving humanity, supporting her students, her clients, activating their highest potential, and helping us create a rich legacy. And that's exactly where I think she has been helping me, even though she might not know it, but now she will know after this conversation together. So Katerina, welcome to Inflow. We are excited to have you here. I know that you're all about, it doesn't matter what cards life gave you to begin with. The rules are the same, but the skills of the players are different. So let's go ahead and master life, that you're all about mastery. So welcome. Tell me, how are you feeling today?
It's so beautiful to be in your energy. I just love it. I love your passion, and I love to share this moment with you.
I am super excited to have you. Yeah, you don't even know. So, so Katerina, I think when I was, when you're going through Facebook and all of a sudden you have a thumb-stopping moment, I think it was because I instantly recognize something in you. And that is also in me. Like, since I can remember, I have been this hard cash mystic. You know what I mean? I'm fascinated with everything, mysticism, hidden truth, hidden wisdom. And how can I, apply that to my very human, mundane life? And so tell us a little bit about how you grew up. I know you're an immigrant into the U.S. as well. And more specifically, how did you grow up around money?
Yeah. Well, I was raised by a single mother who always saw my mother working two jobs. And I'm always just, really trying to make it and to survive. And I grew up during the Soviet Union. And when I was just barely 7 years old, the Soviet Union collapsed. Mm-hmm. So what we experience, with the pandemic this year, just multiply that times 20 when the Soviet Union collapsed and people lost all of their savings and all of their sense of security. And, we get imprinted by the external reality in the first 7 years so deeply. So for me, I grew up with deep sense of instability, seeing my mother just working so hard and using her body. Like the model that I saw for my mother, she would sacrifice her body, working on the factory, washing this heavy metal bins constantly in the water, killing her thyroid, killing her adrenals. And when I saw it, and was always struggle, always just like barely making it. When I saw it, I remember giving myself this promise that I will never rely on my body alone to
Mhm.
make it through life.
Mhm.
When I was aware that I had some decent good looks by the age of 12, because in Russia, like people objectify women like 10
Mhm.
times worse than in US. It's very like out in the open there. But
Mhm.
I had this wisdom that was coming from beyond my mind of a child. It was kind
Mhm.
of a mystical remembrance that you got to start planning, you got to start developing your intelligence, you got to start thinking if you want a different life, it's not coming to you on a silver platter. It
Mhm.
gets to be earned, it gets to be developed, and it gets to be built by taking lots of leap of faith and trusting your vision.
Mhm.
But I grew up with very little, Michelle. So, very, very little.
Now you talk you right now you said trusting your vision, and that is something that is a very, when I hear that, it has spiritual aspects in it, but it has very tangible, accessible um, aspects to it, in that it's something that is produced by your mind, by your imagination. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what vision is. um, and and it also has ingredients of you being able to connect with a higher, bigger consciousness than the one that lives just in between your two ears. I always say that there's genius out there, and that we all have access to everyone else's genius if we just don't see each other as a competitor, but as more as collaborators, and all of us being part of, like, a little piece of the puzzle. And so in that sense, let's talk about the mind, and how basically what that is to you, and how you've cultivated it over the years. Because it can be a tool that either serves us, or that also assaults us. I remember times when, I suffered from incredible burnout back in 2011. And that's when I think it was the result of a period of time in my life where I was using my mind, but also my body, to be in constant generation and production mode, and not recognizing that, that there was an easier way to that I was basically following mental models of what success looked like. You know what I mean? And my mind was assaulting me and making me continue running faster and faster and faster, instead of pausing to recognize, to listen to hidden rhythms, and signs that my body was giving me, and so on and so forth. So tell me a little bit about, what do you think is the mind there, or more than anything, an awakened mind?
Yes, you gave me so much gold there to work with. Well, I would start, I will back up a little bit, and I
Yeah.
can bring this conversation to the mind. What helps me is this metaphor. I love sharing this metaphor that we can see the world actually through three different eyes. So
Mhm.
we start becoming aware that we have a physical eye. We see everything through physical eye. And then we begin to open the eye of the mind.
Mhm.
That's where imagination and the genius and visualization comes to play. But then there is also a third eye, which is the eye of the soul. And
Mhm.
when the eye of the soul opens up, that's where we tap into our most greatest vision. And then the mind is here to be the servant of the soul, the tool that we use, right? And then there is also, when it comes to women, since you and I both serve women, I love helping women to understand that they also have the womb eye. So the wisdom of the womb is so powerful, and the heart eye. So now we have 5 levels of awareness. But they start with the physical eye, then the mind eye, then the soul eye. Then the mind connects with the heart, and it opens the heart eye, and then we have the womb eye. So then you begin to perceive your reality through these 5 different lenses.
Mm-hmm.
And then the burnout is not going to serve you, as you already experienced. I went through the burnout as well. We can, start a whole other conversation on that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because you begin to move slower, much slower, and you're able to see so many things multidimensionally at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
the mind is not our master.
Mm-hmm.
The mind is here to be the servant of an awakened heart.
Mm-hmm.
So the heart always knows. The heart has this immediate sense of knowing. Just like you said, when you
Mm-hmm.
found me on Facebook, something deeper recognized. You
Yeah.
read the vibration, you read the familiarity. And
Mm-hmm.
this is, when I share with my fellow entrepreneur women and I say we have this beautiful, powerful awareness called our intuition,
Mm-hmm.
instant sense of knowing. And then the mind, when we train the mind always to bow down to our
Mm-hmm.
intuition knows first.
Yeah.
And the mind is here to assess situation, to analyze, to really be used as a tool.
Yeah.
Mind is also a fantastic, um, it's a fantastic way to refine the vision that comes from the heart,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
always the mind serves the heart.
Yeah.
And that's something, I continually work on, Michelle, because my mind is so strong. If I'm not aware, it can begin to run the show, right? It's so powerful. I'm like, oh, here I am again, thinking that this is all. So it takes that pauses. It takes, I just recently committed to a daily meditation of 10 minutes a day. And this is not a practice that I have a lot of consistency with. So
Mm-hmm.
it's actually really something that I recommend. I fall off the wagon. I'm like, okay, time to recommit to this 10 minutes a day. And what it does, it helps to take that very, very full, active, filled with rich ideas mind and kind of empty it out.
Yeah.
Empty it out so this path of least resistance
Mm-hmm.
itself when you have space for it in your mind. Yeah.
I I
So,
love.
so that's the first one. And then the second one, I a lot of times I share how powerful it is to choose your preferred reality. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why the mind is such an incredible tool. You use your mind kind of like a telescope, right? Like a
Yeah.
mental telescope. You zero in on your preferred reality. And for us women, it's the reality that feels as the most juicy, the
Mm-hmm.
most filled with light, the most filled with delight and pleasure. You know, it's only a matter of time where a woman begins to feel disconnected,
Yeah.
living through masculine driven values,
Yeah.
where it's just goal after goal after goal after goal. Eventually, we climb all these mountains but say, you know what, it doesn't fulfill me.
Yeah.
And that woman begins to remember the whole magic is in the process, it's in the journey,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's creating these connections where you and I connect and nothing else exists for me but the beauty of this moment,
Right. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
we begin to feel rich within. And when we begin to feel rich within, our reality begins to mirror that, but with much more ease and flow
Yeah.
without sacrifice and pain.
Yeah. I can totally relate that. We always talk about, in our coaching, business, with our clients and students, we always say, that money is a matter of the heart, that it is, there's so many, misconceptions in terms of like, is it good? Is it bad? And I'm like, no, it's neutral. It's neutral, and you give it its charge, kind of like electricity. And if you connect it to something heart based, you know what I mean? All of a sudden that makes, the money making, in the journey of creating a tangible physical world, so much more easier. Not that you're not going to have challenges, we're all going to have them, um, but that you're able to meet them from a better place, and go through them or climb over them or do whatever needs to be done, because of that, that connection to something that is much more heart-based, much more than just a dollar amount in your bank account. So I totally relate to that. Now, you talked about right now something about and ideas, that come into your mind. And what I have noticed in my experience is that I have an idea, and it's possibly brilliant. I'm being very modest here. And I entertain it for a little bit. And if I don't take a tiny step towards it, I start second guessing myself, and doubting it. Actually, from a Gene Keys perspective, this is where my mind tends to go, in doubt, inquiry, elimination, So now I know that, but we can talk about that in a little bit, also a little bit more about Gene Keys. But, so with that, with ideas, with you sometimes, having an idea or having a desire or having a request out there for the universe or having a prayer, what is your experience in terms of how to bring those ideas to actual physical reality? What are some steps, like, that you take, that that from working with your clients, that they've taken, and that you see it now and now again, that, wow, this is not a once in a blue moon thing, like this, like if your heart is in it, if you follow this, I don't want to say a recipe, but if you follow these steps, in their entirety, and you are fully immersed in the process, that more than likely it will create the outcome in divine timing, but the outcome will come forward. You know what I mean?
Oh.
So, what are the typical things that you, for example, struggle with when you have a new idea, and how do you still move forward through fear and through anything that might be creating doubt in you?
Yeah. Well, there are some steps, Michelle. Absolutely. Steps, and it's easy to remember, and I love them. They're so simple. So the first step is follow your highest excitement.
Mm-hmm.
Because, a lot of times as visionary women, we have several ideas. And it's like, which one just excites you the most? Like I always say, if you never had to earn an income again,
Mm-hmm.
you would just create for the joy of it, which idea would you go after the first? Which one delights you to create? Which one you just like, I can't wait to offer this to the world. This is my best work. This is my highest excitement. This is my most courageous work as well. So that just starts there, is your excitement, is your commitment to it. The second key point is follow that excitement to the best of your ability. Right? Just asking, what would be the next step? What would be the next step? What would be the next step? And the third component is, do not insist on any specific outcome.
Mm-hmm.
When I remember the real prize is the journey and the growth that comes with the journey, right? Then I playfully create with this idea. So the idea always chooses us.
Mm-hmm.
Ideas come to us from the plane of ideas. It's a fourth plane of existence. We have many, many dimensions of existence, but there is a fourth one where archetypes take place, and where the ideas come, right? So with any great minds would talk about and muse visiting them, or this, there's genius or inspiration comes to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know how sometimes you want to be inspired, but nothing is happening. You can't force it, right? You can't force it. You gotta let go into the nature, go take a bath, completely stop thinking about being inspired. And when you relax your body, inspiration comes. But if you force it, it's like chasing the butterfly. You're never gonna catch it.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it's so much about creative process is creating an environment for it, that it spontaneously and naturally and consistently comes.
Yeah.
Right. So that's really powerful. Is, do you have an environment? Do you set yourself up for an inspired life? And then the inspiration is, to me, it's a regular visitor.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel I go through a certain time in my life where I'm like, it's just a time where I do not feel connected to anything that deeply. And that's okay. It's just a period of time where I'm being given a creative gap,
Yeah.
just a creative gap, right? And I let go and I trust that inspiration always returns.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah.
No, and I wanted to add, I remember the moment that I started having like an hour of power in my calendar where it was completely unscheduled time, where it wasn't, okay, it doesn't need to look like this. It doesn't need to look like in a 20-minute meditation. It doesn't need to be in, 20 minutes of breath work, but allowing myself some freedom, within that hour of power. Maybe it looks like just sitting outside in my garden with my dog, listening to the birds, and in order to, like you said, be able to then start my day from a much more creative and inspired state, rather than because I have to do that, because then it feels like grind, you know what I mean? And versus coming from a completely different frequency, and the quality of the work that I produce is completely different when it's just, you know, so pre-scheduled and so tight, you know what I mean? And so I can totally relate to that for sure. I liked also what you said about commitment, when you have a new idea, in our kind of like our little land profit, universe that we live in, we always talk, and I actually learned this from another gentleman. His name is Dan Sullivan. He's one of the, incredible, brilliant minds, entrepreneurial, minds out there. And he talks about, us as entrepreneurs and pretty much anyone in anything, that the very first key of having faith in ourselves, he calls it confidence. But he doesn't really, but what he's really saying is faith in yourself, And he says the very first one is commitment. And you just talked about committing to it too. And then you talked about following, and taking a few steps. And he calls it courage, the second C, of going through periods of uncertainty that, and that they're temporary, that where something feels new to you and you're, shit scared, but you do it anyways. And then you get to the third C, which is you start gaining capabilities. And with that comes confidence, based on what you were able to, make yourself. And that confidence leads to bigger projects, having faith in you being able to do bigger things, or things that have a little bit much more visionary impact, that extend beyond just you and your immediate family, but start thinking about, the community and the world in a much larger scale. So I love that you also start with commitment. It seems like a parallel across,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and then the commitment then transforms into devotion. That's where you and I bring our mystical essences together, right? I always use this metaphor of, when you look at the really devoted dancer, or an artist, or painter, or a gymnast, and they are so in the moment, the most enchanting flow,
Mhm.
right? And I can only imagine years of discipline that have been put into the craft, but because they love their craft, they show up for the discipline and they show up for the hours of training. I see entrepreneurship is like that. If you love what you do, whether it's a real estate, helping people find their land, what an incredible, incredible work that you're doing. It's like you're helping realize people their biggest dreams, so they can create their oasis of peace, right? And this is the why. I always say, when you're connected to your why, right, it's so much bigger than closing the deal. It's like you are altering somebody's life, right? And that what drives you to show up and to continue to expand that service, that more and more people could have this different quality of life, different quality of experience.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that
Hit it
devote.
right on the nail. Yes, it's a being of service to both your sellers, to your buyers, and and for us also, we always tell our students what that we're teaching, how to buy and sell land. That when you put that servant heart first, that that people can feel it. Because everyone's always worried. Oh my goodness, what if there's competition and then there's other people, trying to buy and sell land in the market, and I'm trying to do it. I mean, if you differentiate yourself with that heart of service, yeah, maybe others can be faster, more aggressive, but at the end of the day, the one that is going to be enjoying the journey and going to be long standing long after, you know what I mean, it's going to be you, because you're in it for the good reasons. And hey, and at the same time, you're also meeting your own personal goals, and there's nothing wrong with doing well while doing well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, so
Yeah. So that's always been my philosophy, Michelle. Exactly the same. Like before I entered this thought leadership arena, I
mhm,
would always find myself in the highly competitive industries.
mhm.
And it never bothered me because I was like, that's okay. Like 1,000 people can do what I do, but nobody has my essence. Nobody
Yes.
has my frequency, right? And it's like I always maintain that mindset. And it's so true. It's so true because people remember your vibration. They're
Yes.
like, oh, is this just it was just so good to be with that person. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
that, and that's the mind and the heart, right? That's the mind and the heart.
Yeah, absolutely. You just talked about leadership. So in leadership, I always think about, in my particular experience, it has been, one of the first women, in my family to go to university, one of my first women, or family members to create X amount of, wealth, to measure it with a number, you know what I mean? The first one to do, to have done X, the first. Um, uh, I always believe that leadership is not something that is a trait that you are born with. I always feel that that is something that you can just build the muscle of being scared, do it anyways, being scared, do it anyways. And every time, I do it anyways, like I feel like this incredible rush. And in one of the courses that I'm actually taking from you, the Awaken Mind, you talk about how you are also addicted to this. You're a freedom junkie, you call yourself a freedom junkie, and that whenever we take steps as leaders, as first in our families, or as first or as the only one, in our ecosystem doing things, that we create this wave of energy out there into the universe that all of a sudden lifts us all. And I was like almost like in tears when I was listening to you, say that. I'm like, oh my God. So it's not been all just, for my family, for my community, for my ecosystem, but I'm doing it for so many more, and it kind of like anchors me to, oh my goodness, in spite of being shit scared, let me do it again and again and again, because I keep. Can you talk a little bit about these waves and what a sense of responsibility that comes with that? In a way, I felt an incredible sense of responsibility, but also incredible joy and juice, like you said, in going out there and doing that, as leaders, as women leaders.
Yeah, yeah. I keep coming back to this really potent idea that leadership is so deeply connected to our relationship with our own power,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So the more we rise in, first of all, realizing that our power has been hidden or suppressed or denied.
Mm-hmm.
Second, we begin to embrace and kind of awaken that power within. And then third, we
Mm-hmm.
begin to wield our power. We begin to really use our power wisely. And then you can see that's how we progress in our leadership. we begin to become more and more confident and full of faith to
Mm-hmm.
actually trust that we can go into the uncharted territory, and then we can trust our capacity. Leadership to me, Michelle, is so much about willingness to trust my capacity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's my favorite mantra that I offer to your incredible community. Is like when you find that trembling within you and those butterflies in the stomach, which is to be expected when you're stretching and growing. If you don't feel that, you're not going after bold vision,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if you're going after bold vision, you will tremble in your boots. You will be like, I am trembling in my
Feeling.
right? And that's the moment where I chant within my mind. That's where how I train my mind. And I say, I trust my capacity fully. I trust the next moment. I've been trained for this. I trust my capacity. I wonder what will happen next. And I lead with curiosity instead of an anxiety. It's the same feeling, but I tell my mind it's curiosity. You're just so excited to discover what's on the other side of this risk,
Uh-huh.
right? Because you're not going to be the same. You're not going to be the same when you take that journey. So it's such a beautiful process. So leadership is a relationship with our own power. And when I see somebody who struggles with leadership, they really struggle with their power.
Mm-hmm.
They either don't know how to step into it, or they have a lot of power leaks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, a lot of times for us women, it's weak boundaries, difficulty of saying no. You know, really this addiction to the superwoman complex,
Yeah.
which is not healthy and it doesn't serve us.
Yeah.
And you know, I notice the more spaciousness I create, the more I'm able to receive, the more I begin to bring my most brilliant work into the world, the more I begin to lead in a way that empowers others, in
Mm-hmm.
the way that calls out leadership in others simply by walking your path.
Mm-hmm. 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 I'm totally there. And I love that you equate anxiety and curiosity. I'm like, you know, they feel the same, you
Yeah.
know, in your body. And but I never equated it with the word curiosity. I love that. I love that. And that yeah, excitement and fear are almost the same thing too. You know what I mean? So I totally get it. So and I totally, understand what you mean about power. In the U.S. specifically, this money thing for women is about 40 years old. It was in the 1970s, and we still needed, you know, our spouse to co-sign in order to open a bank account and so on. And when that ended, so it's a new thing relatively, to us. In the context of what we do, I feel that a lot of women I think second guess themselves because of that, because they're like, well, I haven't had the experience of having dealt with, either bigger numbers, or to really believe that I can create, six figures and make incredible quantum leaps, using this real estate vehicle in a matter of a quarter of 3 months. You know what I mean? Because it's not something that, has been common to us to begin with. Which leads me down an incredibly interesting rabbit hole of of God and infinite spirit. And I know you have, because I have taken the course, the goddess, and it's basically walking, a student or a seeker of truth or wisdom through the eyes and through millennia of civilizations that have at some point, really been devoted to God, but God from the point of view of God, if God was a woman.
Yeah, female teaching, yes. Uh-huh.
Which for me is incredible, because I mean, I don't know how old you are. I think you're much younger. I'm in my 40s, and God has always been, and I was raised Catholic, very conservative. I was brought to church every single weekend, whether I felt like it or not, and so on and so forth. My daughter, we actually, waited almost 3 years to baptize her, and it was on the request of both of our parents. My husband is also raised, Catholic, and but not because we felt the need, to do so, but we're like, okay, we need to appease our parents, and because that's not, what being in communion with God to me is all about. But in any case, that ritual has its place, and it's wonderful. But now, if I was to give people an idea, or if we were to give people an idea of, and I think you've already expressed this a bit in terms of how would God create if God was a woman. You know what I mean? If we're goddesses, if we're all goddesses, and we are creating maybe, a certain amount of income, or we're creating the opportunities, for our children to go to private school, or the opportunities for us to travel, how would we, if we were, if God was a woman doing these and birthing all these things, which are traditionally, that creative process, is feminine. But even in men, it's never seen as feminine. But you know what I mean? So how would we do this differently?
I'm so glad you gave me opportunity to speak about this. Well, I was always fascinated by this topic, Michelle, because for the last 5,000 years, we really see a major imbalance between the masculine and the feminine. And when people find themselves back into remembering that there is this great divine mother, this female creatrix of everything we see, they naturally begin this journey of balancing their inner feminine and their inner masculine. So they begin to create their abundance and their expansion more harmoniously. They realize you don't need to kill yourself on the way to success. You can create with seasons. So how does if the God is a female deity, how would the goddess create?
Or with support, you know what I mean? Because we are so trained, like we see men saying, I can do this, I can do this better than anyone else, or whatever, you know what I mean? And not seeking support, even though there's support everywhere for all of us all the time.
Exactly. Well, that relates to sense of worthiness.
Yeah.
When a woman realizes her divine goddess within and her worthiness, I am so worthy to receive support. I'm so worthy, and I love being supported. I remember when I was rewiring that belief system, going from I am a lone wolf going through the jungle of life to wow, I am the divine expression of this goddess energy. And I love feeling supported. I love creating with ease, and I choose to create harmoniously. Then, every time I would hire a mentor for myself, I would bring a team member, I would do it with so much joy. And the more I did it, the more abundance would multiply for me. It's really interesting. You become, when you create with the feminine, you begin to honor the fluidity of your resources. You don't need to stash the security stash under the mattress, like feeling so secure based on what's in you realize I gotta let the resources flow. I gotta let them flow. The more I flow, the more I relax my nervous system around it, the more it comes to me. But if I am like so afraid and so financially constipated that there's not going to be any flow in my life, right? So there's so much about constipating yourself financially and trying
to write that down. I'm like, financial constipation. That, my friends, is a thing.
Right? Yeah. So like you go in bed, you go get yourself a massage, like give a good tip to the massage person, and just feel how good it feels to just give to yourself. And the universe is a giant magnifying mirror of your relationship with yourself, your relationship with life, right? So that's how feminine creates. And also feminine creates with rhythm. There is a season in our creativity. And if we allow the creative gaps, we rejuvenate, we restore, and then we bring like a most beautiful creativity. We create from the place of wholeness.
Mhm.
That's the big distinction that I would say. When the woman creates from the goddess energy, she creates from the place of wholeness.
Mhm.
And she sees other women as her allies, other women as sisters,
Mhm.
right? The more she heals that inner feminine within, she creates from the place of ease and wholeness and unconditional trust.
Mhm.
Unconditional trust.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much. Um, you just mentioned about, in when we talked about support and investments, would you say that investing in yourself has been the best investments ever, like return in spades? Because
I
it,
just, I just hired two female mentors in 1 week. Last week I was like, oh yes. And for me, it's such an intuitive process, Michelle. It's such a, with some I just know immediately,
yeah,
because this is what I have noticed. Every time I would approach a threshold of next expansion, I
yeah,
feel it in my bones. I know it's here. And then I begin to listen. I begin to listen to who shows up on my path. And
mhm,
sometimes I just know immediately. And but that's with one person. And with another mentor, she came to me in the vision.
yeah,
I've been aware of her work. I'm not even on her email. I'm no, I think I'm on her email list, but I'm just, I'm just tapping it, just being aware of her work, and then immediate awareness. Okay, this is your guide for this next expansion.
mhm,
And I do not doubt. Immediately I go apply. Immediately I go take action. And it's such a beautiful unfolding, because if we trust our intuition, everything will show up. Resources, everything. To me, it's been such a, like this year, we were talking about how this has been such a powerful year for us, right? The
mhm.
same thing for me. My business just like blossomed. I don't use the masculine word of blew up. I just say my business blossomed.
I love it.
Yeah, right. And there was a specific actions that I took. I never hoarded. I never believed in lacked, and I never stopped investing. I kept resources circulated, kept them circulating. And the universe says, I see how you walk, and I'm gonna give you even more resources to circulate,
Yeah.
right? Because you are not afraid of lack.
Yeah, very, very similar, experiences right now during the last 5 to 6 months for me as well, in terms of, hiring, investing, like, big dollar amounts. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm banking on myself. I'm doing this out of just this pure, you know, um, intuition, following it. And, it has paid off in spades. Like I cannot yeah begin to even I think I'm only starting to see what that is, that in moments of incredible uncertainty, when you, like you said, where you're not financially constipated, but on the contrary, you look for support and you find it and you go and you invest in yourself, that it's been incredibly invaluable, because it's been women that have been teaching me about how to think about my thinking, and that's something that very little few people are doing right now. Everyone's trying to figure out either what does historically in an economic downturn, what can we expect, and da, 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 and trying to look for data when it's so unprecedented, you know what I mean, that that data is no bueno anyways. You might as well just follow your gut, follow your intuition, and keep moving forward. Anyways, I know that I've been taking a lot of your time, but I could talk to you for hours. Really, I could talk to you for hours. Anyway, so let's talk about maybe a little bit about what do you do, Katerina, and a little bit about your. I know you just started a podcast. You also you also coach. And what are you curious about? What is this? What is the next level of expansion? Where are you going to be serving women?
Oh, it's the next level of expansion. I have this deep sense of calling and a vision that is so beyond my comfort zone. That's what I know it's the right vision.
Uh-huh.
And it's to bring 12 mystical women together
Mm-hmm.
for the leadership, really visionary, mystical leadership mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
And to activate this powerful number 13, which is a very mystical number. And
Mm-hmm.
it's through the chemistry of the group that something really, really beautiful will be formed that
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be possible to birth if it's only been the individual journey alone.
Mm-hmm.
And part of this experience is a little bit selfish because I want to create this group for myself. I'm like, leadership can be really lonely, can
Uh-huh.
be
Yeah.
really lonely. And I wanted to create a container where women can discover the power of where you birthing a powerful vision and you are supported by your true peers and your true allies. So this is what's coming forth in January of 2021.
So how can someone connect with you if anyone listening was interested? Because this recording, baby, is actually going to be published already next week. So.
Yeah. Well, I have my website. It's just my name. It's www.KaterinaSatori.com. And there is these tabs like About Me, Programs, and there's a tab called Mastermind.
Yeah.
And it's right there. And, I've been obsessed about thought leadership, really helping women to see themselves as thought leaders. Thought leaders are people who spread ideas that create change.
Mm-hmm.
They codify their wisdom and they create a unique body of work.
Mm-hmm.
So really just taking all of these experiences and lessons of how do you leave your legacy now? Like, Michelle, if I'm gone tomorrow and we don't know when we're gonna go,
Yeah.
I already will leave behind a pretty significant library of my programs and my teachings,
Mm-hmm.
that can be passed on and can be leave after I am gone. I desire for every woman the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fulfilling. It's like your digital babies,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you package your wisdom and you share and they spread the word.
Yeah.
So I love helping women with that. And that it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be really, really you with
Yeah.
your flavor and your magic.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is the biggest baby. And then also, Michelle, I am writing a book. Woo! That takes all of my courage. It's the book that is, when I was, one of my mentors said, Katerina, what book are you scared to write? Aha.
Oh boy.
Tell me the book that is very like you are like 15 principles of success, 2 blueprints. Like, I don't want to hear any of that. What book are you scared to write? I'm like, I know exactly which one. And Michelle, I am in the birth canal of birthing that book right now. So I hired a book midwife
Uh-huh.
to go through it. So I'm birthing that one as well. And then my podcast called Satori Moments that can be found on Spotify, on Anchor, and it's like 7 minutes.
I know it's like full pack of just true gems and wisdom, like essence in every single word. I'm like, wait, let me, rewind. What did she just say? Like, oh my gosh, yes. So, totally. Anyone listening to this, you guys need to tune in for sure. Now, if you were to leave a woman, whether that is starting their entrepreneurial journey or already in the trenches with 3 pieces of advice, what would those be?
Trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait. Create. And the more joy you allow yourself to experience every single day, the more easier you manifest your biggest dreams.
Oh my God. Love those 3. Yeah.
Yes, like the joy, I always feel the hummingbird. Sometimes I call in the spirit of the hummingbird and I just say, where can I appreciate and find beauty? because the beauty opens the heart and the beauty guides you to the most incredible opportunities. So find beauty, trust yourself, create, don't wait for the perfect conditions. You just say, I'm going to create for the joy of it. And when you're guided by joy, you will always be guided to where you truly belong.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen to that, for sure. Thank you so, so very much, Katerina. It's been such an honor. And, thank you everyone that is listening. I am always excited to come to you and share space with you and bring you these amazing women, thought leaders, and just real trailblazers, in their area of expertise. And I hope we, get to spend some time together in the next episode of Inflow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope this episode left you feeling inspired and ready to get inflows of cash, inflows of light, and inflows of faith in your life. I welcome your reviews on iTunes. Please leave me a review and help me create an amazing community of women in flow. Thank you, as always, for sharing your voice by going to michellebosch.com and joining the conversation about this show. And while you're there, grab a copy of my 10 Commandments to Living a Life in Flow. You can also follow me on Facebook at Michelle Bosch and on Instagram at Michelle Bosch Official. Thank you very much, and until the next one.